So here we have some Tropican, which is sufficient for a large Amazon species. Do we recommend feeding all species 70%?
The recommendations vary a little bit. The reason for that is over the years, avian nutritionists have realized that too high protein diets, often supplied with high extrusion, high performance extrusion diets, can lead to kidney damage. Also, for smaller species of citizens, usually what we're recommending is for anything smaller than the green cheek conures, including the cockatiels, the parrotlets, the lovebirds, the budgies, all the Australian parakeets. They can definitely thrive on having a higher percentage of seed in their diet, usually enhancing the motility of the ventriculus. Therefore, for these species, we usually recommend more of a 50–60% diet being of a Tropican granule.
So here at Harry, where we feed 100% Tropican extruded granules, we have no need for an additional supplement such as prime. But there are certain cases when you would need it, right?
Obviously there is. And actually prime was Harry approved when Tropican was being formulated. At that time, the hand feeding formula, Tropican hand feeding formula, didn't even exist. And so the homemade hand feeding formula was being supplemented with prime. And until the birds were actually eating the, at the time, novel Tropican, then prime was being offered on the soft foods. When Tropican was the sole 100% food being offered to the colony, then there was no more need for it. Now, coming back to the 70% for individuals that cannot reach it, right, then definitely we would recommend that prime be sprinkled 3–4 times weekly on the soft foods, and we'll be explaining how you can achieve this on either the fruits, the soft foods, or the millet. And also we recommend that prime be fed or supplemented to the birds, such as the finches,
right,
and the canaries,
the
and
ones
the
who
small
don't
bills.
get the 70%.
Of course. Right.
So for our fellow aviculturists, would we recommend the 70% as well?
Yes, we actually recommend the same percentage of diet being fed to birds that are actually breeding or on the onset of breeding. What most aviculturists will do is they usually feed a higher concentration of percentage of Tropican granules out of breeding season, and then trigger the onset of the breeding season by offering enrichment foods a few weeks prior to the breeding season to set off the birds into breeding mode. Now, obviously this makes sense because in the wild, when there's more variety of foods to forage, birds usually are hormonally triggered to start breeding. This is actually a fear factor for us when we evaluate all the negative association of hormonal overdrive in companion birds that is usually caused by parrot caretakers offer an enormous amount of variety of foods for the companion bird. But for breeders, this is something we want. We don't usually fear the hormonal overdrive with breeding birds, unless, of course, we're talking about some species of cockatoos, which can become quite aggressive. And so for these birds, it is favorable to do the 30% of enrichment foods just prior to the breeding season. And what we usually recommend is when the babies start hatching, and the parents are now feeding baby birds in the nest box, that they limit the quantity of soft foods being offered. Of course, this is to allow the higher concentration of food to be fed to the chick to be an extruded formula, such as Tropican. Now, of course, an important note to mention, once again, is that we would probably be switching most of our birds to high-performance formula just prior to the onset of the breeding season.
As opposed to the lifetime.
Yes, several weeks prior to this. This is to ensure that all the nutrients will be optimal for egg production and, of course, for optimal growth. Now, there is an exception to be made with some of the smaller species, such as the conures and smaller citizen species, that can also thrive during the breeding season on a lifetime formula. This all depends on their energy requirements. This all depends on the size of flights that they're housed in. This also depends on whether or not they're being housed in outdoor aviaries that might be in temperature that is a little cooler. Some of our European aviculturists and us as well during the October months, our birds are in outdoor flights where it's a little bit cooler, so then these species can actually thrive on the high performance. But we want to make sure that we're limiting the amount of protein that we're offering to our birds throughout the year.